Many thanks to Resonix Sound Solutions for making this podcast a reality. Find out more about Resonix sound treatments at resonixsoundsolutions.com. Welcome to the SQOLOGY Podcast. I am here tonight with Michael Myers. Hello, Mike.
Hey, Clifton.
Somewhat quickly, I'm going to spin off of the opening reads, and I wanted to just kind of help as far as with Steel Valley to kind of keep some information flowing there. So I got a sponsor list, the current sponsor list from Larry, since I would say Steel Valley and Larry's efforts with getting brand support tied to the show is better than I think most.
Yeah, it's been pretty impressive over the years how much traction he gets with sponsors and stuff like that. He must put a lot of work into it.
He does. Deserves a lot of credit for that, especially an event like SVR where he has beyond finals level support as far as, people there having booze, doing things, whatever. But Arc Audio is the title sponsor again. I think they have been from at least since we rebooted things, in 2018 or so. So that's pretty impressive. Zapco and ESB, which are kind of one of the same company, but they're a gold sponsor. Now, I don't know what the difference is between the precious metals here, but I'm just going to say what he's got. And the platinum trophy sponsor is Brax Helix Match Blam, which of course is MSC.
Yeah.
Gold level is Karma Mobile Audio. And then the silver trophy sponsor is US Acoustics. Great dude. And then bronze level is Creative Products Design. Do you know who that is?
I do not.
Me either. And then Davis Distribution and Audio Intensity, Scott Welch, have prizes. And then Stereo Installs is doing the trophies. I believe they've done the trophies the last year or two.
Yeah, they do a good job.
And then gold level support sponsor, and I think this might be a first that I've seen, is an individual, Harry Kimura.
Oh, wow. That's awesome.
Yeah, so I thought that was pretty cool. So I'll just reach out now if anybody knows any of those people or any of those people are listening for whatever reason, if any of those kind of is part of the service we're doing with SVR, if any of those people want to come on and talk about what's going on. A few of those people are probably at Knowledge Fest right now in Las Vegas, so they have other words. But I don't know. Some of the it seems like some of the major key brands have kind of dropped off on Knowledge Fest. So
I went to the Knowledge Fest Vegas, and I thought it was a really great show. But I guess it's a little less this year. But I haven't really talked to anybody that's there, so I don't know if that's true or not. But
right, it's interesting, and in a lot of this episode, I kind of want to dive into some of the interesting dynamics within the industry and competition too. It's so hard now with the shift as far as sounds where I work. I haven't really changed fundamentally, but when hybrid shifted over to sounds and I went with it, then obviously the market is completely different. The people are completely different. All that. The push is so much more when you go to an event like a rally or whatever. You're there with techs to work and put systems on bikes there and then, and it's 100% a sales event.
Yeah, it's a sales event, kind of like no other. Because most of the sales types events that you would think, like Knowledge Fest or Master Tech or something like that, maybe you take some orders or not. I don't really know how that works on the manufacturing end, but you talk to a lot of people in hopes and promise, that you'll make sales later or something like that.
Yeah.
Whereas
exactly.
y'all are making sales in real time and doing the installation right now,
Right. It's pretty much, we'll talk for an extra 45 seconds here. If you're ready to spend money, then we'll keep talking. Otherwise, I got these 10 other people over here I need to talk to.
Right. Yeah.
So it's a completely different dynamic, and it really is that. And I'm sure it's different for different levels of brands. Hybrid in particular is based as an enthusiast brand. It was always geared in that direction. So company like Alpine or JL or whomever, but like with the trade shows, JL pulled out of CES quite a long time ago because back then CES was the big show. And, when they pulled out and did their own thing, It was kind of a big to do at the time. And now, CES has virtually dropped off. It seems like actually now SEMA is getting a lot of that car audio attention. There's a lot more different levels of people at SEMA. It's a lot more mainstream. So you have more opportunity for people to find you if they're a general shop. On the flip side, there's just so many. SEMA's so big. I don't know how anybody focuses.
Yeah, I've never been, but I've heard it's so massive. You kind of have to plan ahead, where you want to, what booths you want to try to see and all that kind of stuff, because there's just no way to see it all.
And again, your mileage may vary depending on where you are in the industry. But in the last episode we had with Jeffrey, he really got me thinking. And honestly, I actually had a couple people ask afterward, like, did you guys plan that out with Jeffrey? Like, did he know all the questions ahead of time and everything? And I was like, nope, we
just let it flow,
we just rolled into it. But, he got me thinking more on how, because you get your mindset of after a period of time and you have your own biases and thought processes and everything. And I think that just gets baked in. And you don't necessarily pull yourself away from that to see why you think that. It's just that, well, that's the way it is. So that's the way it is. And I won't say he changed my mind on anything, but he definitely made me I think helped me get down to the path of seeing it more clearly. And I think my own experience over the past 15, 20 years with, hybrid is a unique case of that, and being able to kind of separate some of the sales versus competitor events, or, and I would also say like the enthusiast versus mainstream targets, I think overlap a lot in people's thought processes, but maybe they don't realize, like I haven't, how much that affects everything when you change that market. So, I'll ask you, like with hybrid, back when it was a growing brand from, being founded like mid 2000s,
right?
You weren't who you are now in the industry, as far as, you weren't tuning cars at a, national level. You weren't judging at a national level.
No,
you weren't you didn't own your own shop.
Right. Yeah.
But you had been an enthusiast, and around car audio scene for decades, even by that point. I'm going to ask a very pointed question here, but when and why do you think that you first knew what hybrid audio was?
Yeah. So at that time, I was still working in car audio, but for a shop that's no longer in business. It was called Audio Specialties. It was over in West Knoxville, and I worked for that shop from 2003 all the way up until I started working at Best Buy in 2008.
Okay.
So during that time, I would still go through, forums, and because magazines were kind of on their way out, there were still some, like Pass Mag and stuff like that. But I didn't really go to a lot of events. We went to, I think, the finals they had in Charlotte. I can't remember what year that was. But
I'm not sure either, because the last time I was at Charlotte finals, I think, was 2001.
Yeah.
Or 2002, somewhere in there.
Yeah.
But yeah.
I remember Scott's car was there, but it wasn't hybrid audio yet,
Right.
But yeah, I became aware of hybrid audio through following competition stuff. Now, I followed it mostly online because there wasn't a great deal of events, to my knowledge, in our area. It wasn't until later that I became aware of Mecca and how many events they had in the Tennessee area. But but during that time, I didn't really know. I was kind of out of the loop as far as competition goes. I was doing more just day-to-day installs and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But through the forums and stuff. And,
so like Dyma and that.
Yeah. What was the other one? Was it like Car Stereo or something like that? Anyway, there was
Sound forums back in the day.
Car Sound. Yep.
Yeah.
And so forums like that would see what people's using, and through some of the magazine type stuff, seeing who's still doing it and still winning and stuff like that. And hybrid had a massive impact in the competition scene, because it seemed like, I didn't really understand it because I'm kind of an outsider, but essentially the the brand was kind of built around that.
Yeah, for sure. And I had a feeling that was probably because that was kind of how everybody knew about it. I mean, myself, I was real good friends with Scott back late 90s, early 2000s. We were both on, Team Zepco together back in the day. And so, I knew him, but then like around 2003, I got engaged, 2004, then 2005, we had, our twins. And so, around 2003-ish, probably, I kind of dropped off of car audio altogether.
Yeah.
And then it wasn't till around 2010, 2009. And I was in structural engineering at the time, and the company I worked for went bankrupt. And so then I went to a different company, but I was working sales on the road. And I was like, well, if I'm going to be on the road however many hours a day, I just want, put a system back in the car. And I already had everything except for like speakers, just because they kind of get tossed around the house, whatever. And, their amplifiers kind of get put in storage and you pull out 20 years later and whatever.
Yeah.
Speakers are like, I probably don't want to use those.
Yeah. It's been laying on its cone for a while.
Yeah, exactly. So like it's been in the attic in extreme temperatures for, however many years. Like it's pretty brittle. It's probably not that great. It's like, pulling out 20-year-old tires and expecting them to work.
Yeah.
So I was, looking around, whatever, and, did the searching on Amazon and the typical Google searches. And I didn't really know, like most, Team Image Dynamics and MB Corp back in the day, but neither one of them were what they were, before.
Right.
And you could tell that pretty quickly. I mean, even MB Corp, before I left, had already gone the way of the dodo bird. So just started doing, I had a 3-way set of, I think, Dyne Audios in my like cart ready to buy.
Yeah.
And then I just kind of like, for whatever reason, I was cruising around One More Thing, and then I saw Scott Bawalda attached to Hybrid Audio Technologies, and I was like, what the heck is that?
Yeah.
I know Scott. I don't know what that is. And I'm like, oh, they're speakers. And then, it's like, I go to the website, it's like this basically a text file with what look pictures taken with a power shot on a dining room table or something.
Right.
I was like, well, okay, I don't know, but I know Scott. I know he's not going to do anything half-assed, right? So I was like, whatever. So I reached out to him and I was like, hey, here's my case. And he's like, oh yeah, hey, great to hear from you. Here, I'll hook you up. Here you go. And I paid for the speakers and everything. It wasn't like he sent them to me for free, but got them installed for whatever reason. So like 2 miles away from me was a shop that was a hybrid audio dealer with a competitor who kind of ran the shop and did the installing and stuff, Corey. So, and he's been a Mecca judge up until very recently, in fact.
Oh, Corey Bradley?
Yeah, Corey Bradley.
Yeah.
So he installed my first hybrids in my car, and along with like a 15-year-old Adair Audio Tumult and the Zapco 4.0 and 9.0X from way back. But
what
anyway,
kind of car was it?
It was a Honda Accord Coupe.
Okay.
I never competed with it. It never had DSP or anything in it. It was just straight up.
Yeah, like 2-way kind of a thing. Or?
Yeah, just 2-way passive crossovers. But man, I got, and it was funny because back in the day, I always remember fighting mid bass. Like I had the JL IV8s, from back in the day and everything, trying to chase that mid bass, and then got these in the car, and they were just a 2-way 7-inch mid-range driver in the doors, and I was like, holy crap, this thing has a lot, like this really performs. I didn't know much about, I understood a lot about speakers and all that from back in the day, but it wasn't like I was sitting there evaluating that. It was more like, oh, here's some speakers, let's put them in. And man, I was just, this is pretty awesome. And then, went on the road, started, kind of doing some rep sales, stuff like that. I ended up handling the, local dealer. Then of course, ended up, working for Hybrid full time. But, all that to say, like, I personally picked the brand because of, I knew the person behind it.
Right. Yeah.
It wasn't like I kind of saw the names attached and I was like, okay, cool. There's no reason for me not to give it a chance. And I'd rather spend money with somebody I know versus, Amazon.
Right. Yeah.
So much of that build up in the beginning because, Scott Scott was obviously a hardcore competitor and never satisfied with the products that were being made, especially, back then. You didn't have the catering of products to this market like you do now.
Yeah.
And so, and it was developed during competition around other competitors going, hey, why don't we do our own thing and do it better? And so the whole premise was based on enthusiasts wanting a better product for their own cars.
Yeah, you could tell.
So, then it was obviously built up on the competition scene with other competitors, building the team, all of that. So like you said, a lot of that notoriety within the community was that enthusiast base.
Yeah. And that's kind of where I lived, as an enthusiast. I was still really looking through all the forums and all that kind of stuff. I would see, big red truck and all that kind of stuff, and it was like, that looks really cool. I don't know what it sounded like because I didn't go to any events, but it looked awesome and they won a lot of contests. So obviously it's pretty good,
Right. Well, and that's where a lot of the buildup, especially back then, you had. So, I mean, as far as the brand goes, much of the endorsement was from Scott himself.
Yeah.
Because, back then, especially when Scott switched amplifiers, like when he went from, Zapco to DLS, then all of a sudden, people are starting to use DLS.
Yeah.
So a lot of that, even though it was basically his own product, a lot of that was just, again, kind of like what I did. It was like, well, Scott's not going to half-ass it, so I'll give it a shot. And I'm glad I did, but, I'm just saying, like, if I hadn't had that personal connection, I don't know if I would have made the same decision at the same time.
Right.
And then, you had the endorsement of the competition scene on top of that. So you had people kind of piling on, especially since, again, back then you didn't really have much in the way of brands being involved in competition.
Right.
A lot of your big brands had pulled away from that support, and in their defense, probably in a lot of ways for good reason.
Yeah, I'm sure it didn't make a lot of financial sense at the moment,
Right. But that gave room for a brand like Hybrid to grow. Now, it hits its brick wall to a certain extent at some point, because one, you're catering very much to, again, the enthusiast base. And so if you look at the enthusiast base in other fields like cell phones or wearables or something like that, and there's some really good YouTube videos on this subject in particular that kind of dive into this better than I'm going to attempt to, but you have these different products that come out that try to cater very highly to a demographic of like tech nerds who want to be able to jailbreak their phone or want to be able to put this OS on it or whatever. And then they want this really nice camera on their phone or this wearable that is really nerdy and does all these different things and does a big dive in, deep dive into all these places that, the mainstream products don't. I would say even Apple itself is a good example where Apple was that enthusiast brand in the beginning. And then when things went mainstream, essentially with the iPhone, and then even over the past years, that focus has really shifted more and more into the 80% of the market, because why wouldn't you?
Right, yeah, that's where the dollars are.
At that point then, though, and Apple's done probably a little bit better job than most, but, many of the smaller companies that don't have decades of history and millions and billions of dollars to float on, plus an incredible product that everybody wants, those brands have a hard time in that shift. And like Oppo is a good example. If you remember...
Oh yeah, Blu-ray players and stuff.
Yeah, so they had the amazing Blu-ray and DVD players, right? And they had this big enthusiast base. And then they went into cell phones. And then they kind of built up that same base there to a certain degree, but then they couldn't get beyond that point to get into the mainstream. And at one point they were like in the top 5 for cell phone producers in the world, which you wouldn't think, right?
Yeah, I didn't know that.
Yeah, but they have it's like a huge base in certain countries, like in a couple Asian countries and stuff, and they kept hitting these like different walls and they're still like a very successful company in their way, but they're so far removed from that enthusiast base that they built up the brand name with the DVD players and the Blu-ray players.
Yeah, exactly. It's a totally different company now.
Right. So you at some point the problem is that to be in business, right, you need you need scale and margin, obviously to make a profit. And then you need costs to be, your cost for cost of business, just in terms of development, research, and all those kinds of things, to be as low as possible, because those are obviously, you don't have a 1-for-1 in getting that back unless you have a really successful product. Of course, most enthusiasts, and I think this has gotten more and more over time, especially within those communities like Dyma, like your Facebook groups and everything else, where the demands for a cutting edge, amazing product are so high. And so the costs that have to go into your development are so high, because in this scale of business within this niche, like, you're not going to go through the product that you have to make in the time frame to be able to make the next product they want in time. If you look at JL Audio, even, how that's not a small company, right? And how long has some of these products been on the market?
Oh yeah, decades.
Yeah, right. So, and then, with the enthusiasts too, there's a very low scale. They're the smallest portion of the market, necessarily. Like, we know them all, right? Like,
yeah, exactly.
And then your margin ends up being almost the lowest with those, because they also want it at the lowest price, because it's one of those things where, hey, we're pushing this and we're special, and there's 3 of us and we want it for free.
Yeah.
So how do you make a successful business off that? And that's the problem. You kind of don't.
Yeah, it's not really possible, honestly.
In the beginning, the major developing years, I would say, were more like 2008 to 2014, 15, where, hybrid really saw a lot of growth worldwide. There was a lot going on. Like team hybrids, for example, was a big portion of that, because, it wasn't just going out and competing. There was a lot of R&D pulled from, the people involved there that pushed the products into the next thing. There was a lot of feedback of, hey, we need this, we need that, which is slippery slope, because you make that thing that, these people demanded that you really need to make, and then you sell 5.
Yeah. I don't know how you would, there's got to be a way to kind of try to figure out how many of these things are we going to sell, even if we make it.
Well, it's tough, right? Because the L2 SE and the U2, for example, that was, both of those have ended up being very successful products. The U2 and the L2 SE. I'll tell you, the only reason those exist is Marsha Beeler.
That's hilarious.
Because she would harp on my phone at least once a week, going, when am I going to get a 2 for my car? I'm like, well, you can probably fit a 3 in there and be fine. I want a 2. So that's where the U2 was like my pet project, to start to finish, to get going and to make Marsha happy. And then Scott was like, oh, let's make an L2 SE. And then that popped out of nowhere. I don't know where that came from. But, and now, they're a lot of people's favorite driver. But, that was purely how that came about. Like the rose tinted copper was because a fairly major player, historically in audio, was involved in some of that. And he pretty much was like, hey, I'll kind of getting it going, but I want this color.
Nice.
So a lot of those things that ended up being a major part of the brand were just, again, all those relationships and from those enthusiasts and everything else. So, and like when it comes to the competition scene, like it's such a ebb and flow and a circle that it's difficult for you to unwind from that in any way, shape, or form, unless there's a board of directors handling it.
Yeah.
Because if there was a board of directors handling some of these decisions, that it doesn't make sense if you're a big enough brand to be going after major market share in whatever this thing is that we do. But at the same time, even you take some of those biggest brands, and obviously you have a shop, you know where to find these things. But if I was to just say, hey, where do I get Arc Audio? I'm in Southern Indiana. I honestly, I don't know. I call Arc Audio.
Right. Yeah. I know a guy.
Where to send somebody, where do I send, Helix? I would probably send someone to Audio Specialist in Tennessee, which isn't too terribly far away from me.
Yeah.
Arc Audio, I would send to you guys essentially, or maybe Mobile Audio Plus in Bloomington, Illinois, where we've done a lot of shows. That's 4 hours either direction though, from where I'm at.
Oh, right.
Before you run into that. Karma would again probably be y'all. and then you get into some of these other things like, your gold horns and your this and your that, and, the stuff that is really the products that are like Purify, speaker drivers. I would say Purify probably, correct me if I'm wrong, but, I think right now probably has one of the highest regarded brands among, people as far as,
it's just raw drivers. Yeah.
Yeah. But, they're not catering to car audio necessarily. They're making stuff to do for home audio where they, can get a sale of 200, 250 at a time.
Yeah. They're selling to people that manufacture like speakers, like Aaron tests, like.
Yeah, exactly. Our entire market ends up being spillover at that point. What ends up happening is you end up in a position with all these brands. Name the brand. It's a cycle that happens because of business and capitalism.
Oh yeah, for sure. Yeah.
You always end up at this point where the people who are the enthusiasts, the early adopters, the people who are on the cutting edge of all this stuff, they're also, for the most part, the least loyal. They're the ones who want to go on to the next product.
They're always looking for the best thing or the next best thing or whatever it is.
Well, this guy over here said this is the way to go. This tweeter sounds way better. Well, this mid range doesn't do this. Well, this mid bass, blah blah blah. And especially I think with speakers because it's so subjective.
Yeah.
Amplifiers and DSPs are a little more user, a little more, that's the Rolex I want versus that Rolex. It's like there's a little less magic involved with, I think, a lot of that stuff. But, with the speakers especially, there seems to be this magic quotient. At the end of the day, the 99% of it is how you put it all together and tune it,
Oh, yeah. Well, I sent you those graphs that one time where I changed mid-bass drivers from one brand to another, and it looked,
you could hardly tell a difference.
It looked the same,
So did you change the speakers? Or?
Yeah, no tuning. I just swapped one for another and just re-RTA'd it, and it looked almost identical. It was
like I think you probably could have moved your mic placement and made more of a difference than changing speakers did.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it's you get to obviously there's garbage out there, and obviously there's overhyped stuff out there. But I think
sure
there's a certain point when put in the right hands and you put the right thing together as a cohesive package, and then it's tuned and set up properly. Most of this stuff is going to be able to be an any given Sunday championship level thing if you approach it right.
Yeah, if you do the installation work that makes it to where the product can shine. I think any good product would do well.
And the car platform itself, in our case, is a big part of that in terms of how complex your install is going to have to be to make it work.
A
Camry platform or a 4Runner platform, or as you have found, the Subaru platform, which is probably very closely shared with the Camry and stuff. So, I think
it's the same.
Lots of similarities.
It's the same thing, 6x9s, dash speakers,
Dodges, with the dash speakers and that dash 6x9 combo just seems to, it works.
It's easy. Yeah. Almost every truck has that. The Ford, you have to kind of get the higher level to get the dash speaker, but some of them do have dash speakers, but they do have 6x9s, and so is a Toyota and Nissan and, Dodge and Chevy, and it's crazy.
Yeah, it's surprising if you just let manufacturer of the vehicle do their work and do it well, then it makes it a lot easier for us to do our part. But
as long as they did a decent job, your work's easy.
So I think to relate this back to our last conversation with Jeffrey in competition with hybrid, for example, and I'll kind of goes to the in case there, like when things shifted to sounds, and of course the whole market shifted, everything else at the same time. IASCA sales, Mecca sales. Me personally, I felt like 20 years of my life got erased because it was like, I didn't have any of that stability there with what hybrid had always been and how things worked and, my relationships there and everything else. So, in that process, with this shift to happen, almost has to happen, because it's either your choices kind of are continue to cater to the enthusiast base, but win the lottery to do it.
Right.
because they're not that isn't going to pay the bills at a certain degree. You can't sustain off of that, or you have to shift into a mainstream market to be able to pay the bills, so where then you can go back and do the enthusiast thing. And that's what most of the brands have done, or they've just moved on. And I would say I'll give Arc and Hybrid have obviously been, had their moments of competing against each other, but I would consider Brian a friend. I would consider Fred Lynch a friend. I would consider, I would consider Brad Ott a friend. All those people that are involved with Arc, I would call friends, but I will also say that I think Arc has been one of the best at being able to separate out where they make their money and where their passion is with Arc, and stay at the top of giving the competitor, giving that enthusiast base and the dealer base and everything else a lot of their desires, especially in the DSP products and that.
Yeah, they've been a really good company to work with for us.
Yeah, they've done superb there over time, and they're not the only ones, but I think they're ones that were grassroots at one point too, that were able to find their path in the bigger market, but also keep catering to that other. So I think they're one of the few that have been able to find that line and keep it. I know it's still tough at times for sure. I mean, on both sides, and they're not all, things have shifted with them as well in big ways over time, but at least externally for, the consumer and the competitors and everything else, they've continued that. But, with like the hybrid sound shift, hybrid moving into a space where it was going to be able to cater to that mainstream market was, a very difficult proposition.
Yeah.
And you would immediately have to pretty much just turn your back on everything that you did before, which, is a very difficult proposition for any of us to go, oh, this is the thing we built out from passion and what we wanted in our own cars and everything else, and then to shift that to something else.
Yeah.
But on the backside, during that entire time as well, through a couple different, scenarios beyond just sounds, like motorcycle speaker sales were a huge part of hybrid's existence for a very long time, much longer than anybody would care to admit. So, I mean, a major portion of the revenue that sustained hybrid was off of motorcycle speakers and international sales and those kinds of things. It certainly wasn't from, yes, the competitor base and the diamond market and those kinds of things definitely helped grow the brand, but it didn't sustain the brand by any way, shape, or form.
No, it was kind of like the commercial, what I mean?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, that was the ground roots marketing,
Yeah.
And then the enthusiast base is great for that, because the enthusiast base goes out and finds these things. You don't have to market to them because they find you.
Yeah. Yeah. As long as your product is what they want, they're going to do it themselves.
But then again, that doesn't sustain because there's only so many of those. They don't want to spend money. And they move on to the next thing just as quickly.
As a life cycle.
Yeah. So it's not for a lack of desire or anything else, but going through that. And then, a couple of things I've, dabbled in show wise and stuff like that. And then, continuing Aggieland throughout. And then I think, in my mindset, where I really dug in was wanting to make, in particular, Aggieland, because I've always had the most, thank God for Chris Pate, because, I mean, he's really backed the show and let it breathe. And he pretty much just lets me do what I'm going to do. It's just,
he's like, as long as you're doing it, you do it.
I don't even know if he's going to be there this year, to be honest.
That's wild.
Because it's the same week as Euro Finals. So I don't know if he's going to Euro Finals or not. It could be, maybe, I don't know. But it's like he's that much. He's like, hey, Lou will be there to write the checks. Don't worry. They'll get the door opens for you. It's your thing. Do it, and then catch up with me later. I'm like, okay. But
that's crazy.
In all that, it was a very gut-wrenching thing for me to go through with the transition, because I mean it makes so much more sense now that I'm on the other side with what Sounds does and with what we do in that space, because it's so rewarding in so many other ways, that hybrid wasn't, and also hybrid was rewarding in ways that Sounds isn't. It's not a one for one in any way, shape, or form, but in terms of being able to, you're not begging for every sale. It's just like, here, listen to it. Here's the full thing. In 2 hours, it can be yours, Yeah. And that's something that you just can't do in car audio.
It costs this much. We done now,
Exactly. And then you're on your way, and if you see you again, cool. You got a 3-year warranty. We'll take care of it. The buck stops here. We're not going back and forth going, well, their DSP did this. Well, the amplifier did that. Well, you did this. Like, when you're selling one component of the system, there's that constant, well, if somebody's honest with me, it's like, hey, I set this up wrong and I messed it up, and I'm going to be like, hey, stuff happens. We'll make it work. Let's figure it out. But when somebody's like, I don't know why it looks like it got plugged into the wall. It just happened like that. Your speaker's defective. It's like, no.
It came out of the box like,
yeah.
I didn't even listen to it loud.
Right. I know there's bits of char barbecue popping off of the coil into the box, but don't worry about that.
Yeah.
But at the same time, I mean, in the process, I mean, I lost real friendships. There was a lot of things that fell apart during that case. And a lot of that was me because I had a hard time personally handling all that and the shifts and not being able to be in control of certain things.
You can't do all of it, man. I mean, because it would have fell to you alone,
Well, and there's so much, it's because I constantly kind of get the question, is hybrid still in business? What's going on? I never hear anything, blah, blah,
right.
blah. I'm like, yeah, it's all still there. If you want something, you get a hold of me, whatever. But the problem is that, the amount of effort that it takes to sell $1 of hybrid versus $1,000 of sounds is that much of a difference. It's
right.
It's ridiculous. So, I mean,
you have to focus on what steers the company. It
right.
makes a lot of sense.
But all that to say, with the show side of things, I think it's my psyche and going through that process, now being on the other side of it for the most part, and being able to kind of look at it from more of a distance now after time has passed, because it's 3.5+ years, since kind of the worst of all that was in the transition. And now I look at, and I think it's why I get so defensive of what Jeffrey would call the competitor show.
Sure.
Because I've seen what happens repeatedly when you try to get to that next step. And if you're going after a market that isn't coming to you, you end up having to make changes that leave the market that you already have.
Yeah.
And to me, that almost necessarily means doing things that are a compromise for your enthusiast base. And to me, in the same way that things shifted in a way to sustain a company and business and be able to feed my family and everything else, that also kind of necessarily changed the focus of my time away from the enthusiast. On the flip side, all of that passion has gone into trying to make the events like Aggieland the best for the enthusiast and have 100% focus on that person.
Yeah.
On those people involved, the judges, the competitors, everybody involved, because it's a dynamic. It's not, the judges are basically volunteering, no matter how much we could do or couldn't do for, it's like, it's still.
None of it works without the other. You have to have all of it,
Right. And I mean, and you want judges that are passionate about this. You want judges that are, and I don't mean this in brand bias way, but, bias, that know what they like and know what sounds good and know what doesn't, have experienced thousands of systems over dozens of years, like what we have, and people who are relevant and in this and doing it and eat it and breathe it and live it every day. And along with the competitors who are just as involved. I mean, that's why, I really kind of dug into the invite style.
Yeah.
Where, hey, I want people who are involved in this and doing it and live it and breathe it. That's, this is as much of a get together as it's competition, and especially Aggieland already has that vibe to it, where it's a big, well produced get together.
Yeah. Yeah. It used to be kind of a party.
Well, maybe a little more so than it should have been, but yeah. that has its liabilities as well.
Yeah.
And again, I'm not saying that the other things don't have their own space. It's just I think why I've bristled against it looking back now is because I guess I'm being uncharacteristically conservative in that aspect, that I'm really trying to preserve what we have in that, in our society, in our people. And, as Richard says, many times, that we're here for the people and the brand is SQ,
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not about, once we get into those cars with a clipboard and a pen, or as a group together or whatever, the brands shouldn't be the focus.
Right.
Because again, it comes down to the people that you're going to buy from or do from or with, and whatever that dynamic is.
Yeah. And I to my knowledge, I don't remember working with anyone that really had kind of a brand bias or anything like that. I think all the judges that I've worked with in recent memory have all been really good about that and haven't encountered any problems.
I think a lot of people think it's there, and I know judges have, slipped up as far as just the way they might handle themselves with a certain something or other. But when it comes down to the score sheet and making a call where it counts there, I haven't seen that trend, like what people would. It's much more of a trend about how something sounds, and certain brands have the same people pushing tuning techniques and what they're going for and what benefits them in that space and everything else. So, I mean, you're going to lean more towards what you like versus what you don't. And if a certain group of people consistently do that, then that's good on them for having enough cars to do that,
Right. Yeah.
And that was part of it with hybrids. I mean, it wasn't about stacking it wasn't necessarily about stacking the classes to win everything or whatever else. We just happened to have a really good following for a while. But as a result of that, what I have seen, and since then with certain, you have certain groups that are using a similar tuning or tuner in particular, or whatever, like that does kind of drive the curve as far as where things go, as far as what the judges are getting accustomed to listen to and everything else during the day. So, I mean, if you have a bunch of cars tuned by similar people, I mean, that could be bad. It could be good. I'm not saying it's good or bad. I'm just saying it does, kind of affect the outcomes.
Yeah. I mean, in a long game kind of a way, it does.
And, I'll say too, like, it seems like there's a fairly big cross section of people who are hardcore in this thing that we do that may have addictive personalities, also might be neurodivergent. We all seem to, as a group, tick slightly different.
Oh yeah, for sure.
than other groups. And I think, with that, if you were to change the game the way some would like, where, hey, everything is 100% objective and there's no inconsistency among judges and whatever that is always wins, to where it's like a SPL style outcome. And I've said this many times, and I'm sorry for harp on it again, but again, I'll say, because of all these reasons, if you were to actually be able to accomplish that, I think that a lot of people would actually become disillusioned with it and not enjoy it as much as a result.
Yeah, I think it would be different people that would enjoy it,
Yeah.
It'd be a totally different group, I believe.
But at the same time, it's like, what mainstream people are we going for that would be? What is the example where you see this mainstream of dozens or hundreds or thousands of people participating in what we do? What's the example of that, I guess? Because, I mean, you kind of, marketing 101, you kind of have to go where the people are.
Yeah.
And so
you have to
it's
draw
like
parallels with something else.
So it's like, so where are these people coming from? What are they doing? And what does this look like? Because I don't know what that is. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
If you take, some I've mentioned before, just because I have, for personal reasons to see the parallels, but like livestock judging, completely different thing, but it's also very, very similar in so many ways, where it's well-qualified judges making a judgment call, subjective judgment call on how things are sorted, first to last, in the same way that we do. And they have the same thing where multiple judges is more, typically more desirable, or either that or just a superstar judge, who is just going to be able to, people are going to accept their outcomes and whatever else. But they have the same problem. They have, there's waning amounts of people doing it. They have to do their work to keep people involved in doing it and everybody participating and on board. And you have the same level of people that complain and think it's unfair or this or that or whatever else. And there's a lot of feelings in all this, and that's part of what makes it great. And it's also what can make it not so much fun. But all that to be kind of my settlement on saying why I really personally as far as I can see in the future, will always be 100% focused on the competitor style events in the way, like Aggieland is done, without having, I'm not going to be going after every Tom, Dick, and Harry. I'm not going to be breaking it up to where, well, here's the pro division versus the amateur division versus here versus there. Like,
Yeah.
It's a run what you brung, and it's all on the line, and then we don't have to worry about all those things. And you see where you line up, regardless, overall, it's more about bringing everybody together to get value out of it, whether you win or don't. The idea is that, hey, if my concept as much as possible is to maximize the value that you get out of that event for coming in 30th. And then anything above that is a bonus,
Yeah. And it's a great event because of it, I think. Ever since I started participating, both competing and then later on judging, it's been one of my favorite events because the people are very welcoming crowd. You feel, kind of included, in the whole show. And then Chris and his crew are such gracious hosts that makes it really easy to enjoy, and they have, usually a barbecue lunch, one of the days on Saturday, and it's always a great time, so it's become one of my very favorite shows. I miss the old hybrid show that you used to do. That was a great one.
Yeah, me too. Yeah, I would like to see a reprise of that, and maybe, we're I guess doing a event in Las Vegas February 6, 7 in next year, 2027.
Yeah.
We'll be doing an event in Vegas, so we might be able to bring back some of those dynamics there.
Yeah, that was a really cool event because of it was a higher level of judges' feedback. The focus on the show was much different, is helping competitors be ready for finals or just competition in general. And, instead of just who wins the contest. And that was a really cool event because of it.
Well, it was the same thing there, where it was 100% competitor focus. And also going through all that process and kind of working to being involved in all the events and kind of combining everything, in that, I was for sure in the back of my mind thinking there was going to be some secret sauce that came out of all that. This is the thread of competition, and this is what we can do to bring it all back together, because I'm very much a data-driven person. Like, if I get enough data, and it's like, okay, I have all the data now. And then it was like, I still don't freaking know.
It was a little bit of happenstance, a little bit of, the right time of year, the right people involved, easy to get to place. There's a lot of factors that go into making a show work that I think that competitors don't realize how much effort goes into doing these things.
Oh, yeah. And I think there's a ton of room to be able to branch out and grow. I guess, my thing is that...
Oh, sure.
I never want to lose focus of the people who are involved in making it the best possible thing for those who are here now, and then let the people who aren't here today, we'll let tomorrow worry about that.
Yeah. I remember when Chris Pate, changed Aggieland to try to garner some of those sideline competitors to come back, and get, and he put a lot of money out to bring back that style, and it was the same people as normal. So
exactly. Yep. And then I think it's the same thing with the with the new competitors. It's I think the biggest thing that anybody can do, again, this is a people driven thing. And this might be where the opportunity is really big. And again, this is where I'm not trying to detract from the efforts that are happening throughout all over the place as far as, different styles of events and everything else. I guess I'm looking for ways to make sure we kind of understand what we're doing and then maximize that as much as possible. It's like, if I don't think it's enough for somebody to hear your car and go, wow, that sounds really good, and then get out of the car and then something happen.
Yeah, there's more to it than that, because
I think there has to be a connection,
Yeah, like either a personal connection or I think it's the competitors are the people that will end up dragging other people into this.
Oh, for sure. Yeah.
More than any other thing. Because that's how I got into it. That's how all of the people that, we're Sound Team 6 over the years. That's how they all get there, because I just sort of dragged them into it.
Yeah.
I mean, Chris,
Yeah.
And
well, and you guys had you guys had a local dynamic that no brand could ever have. Just being able to get together, to go out to eat and have that community. I mean, that's huge on its own.
Yeah.
But my thing is, like, when you're in these cases where you're able, obviously the biggest opportunity is when somebody's demoing in your car, right? Because you have that, you're one-to-one with them in the car, and that doesn't need to turn into a sales pitch. But I think if we can kind of get that into okay, what's our next step here to see how we can get this in your car,
Yeah. How do you close it,
And that's the hard part, right? Because, the competitors aren't necessarily the ones that can fulfill that. They can help connect the dots,
Yeah.
Hey, where are you from? And that might be where we need to pull, and Iasca has historically been the best at being that marketing driven organization as far as connecting the retailers together. And Mecca was real good too, especially when Steve was running things. He did a really good job of having the retailers be involved. If you were having an event, and it usually, from speaking as a Mecca event director, what usually would happen was Steve would go, okay, well, if they're gonna, he would put it on them. If they're gonna have a competition at their shop, they need to be a retail member. And I'd be like, okay, Steve, I'll send you the $100.
Yeah. We were retail members for years.
Yeah. I mean, there are several Mecca members, retail members out there that don't know they're Mecca retail members. Just because I was like, yep, I'm having a show there, and yep, they're signed up as a retail member, and here's the money. Just take it and move on.
That's funny.
In fact, it was Mobile Audio Plus. They were one of those, and he sent them a retailer package and everything. And one of them, had Mecca retailer sticker, for the door or whatever. And one of them put it on the inside of my gas cap on my truck. So I get out and go to put diesel in on the way back, and there's a Mecca retailer member sticker on my.
That's funny.
But it's that kind of, if we were able to pull that together in a way where there can be more follow through, more closing. I guess that's kind of where I'm connecting to with the fact that if I go to an event, I'm going to make money for what I'm doing. I'm not there to just do whatever as far as at the, like with the rallies and the motorcycle side of things.
Yeah.
But if you look at things in that same regard on this side where, people are doing a lot of work to branch out and everything, it's not enough for them to feel good they got a demo. I think we got to get that to the next step where, okay, what car do you have? What do you what would you think about having this in your car? What's your budget? Where are you located? Here's the shop there. Reach out to the, or can I get your number? Because that's the biggest thing. People are never going to reach out.
Yeah.
You can be like, oh, here's my card. Nobody going to call you. No. It's like, you got to get their information and then have somebody follow up on that,
Yeah.
If you do that 1,000 times, maybe you get 10.
Right.
But that's 10. 10 would be a huge number right now as far as, if we were able to get that much more involved. So I guess, I'm kind of taking what Jeffrey laid out well and taking that kind of to the next level and going, okay, now what do we do with that?
Yeah.
And how do we keep pushing into this thing? And I think also, again, making sure we understand what, like the Aggie Lands, or even I would still call SVR more of a competitor event,
Yeah, it is.
And, I think the finals in Arkansas, that's going to be a competitor event. Obviously, the ISCA finals, Expona is going to be more of a selling event.
Yeah.
With the competition involved. So
yeah, I mean it's basically attached to a trade show. So
yeah. they're going to have to. They got plenty of time. They're going to be there for like 4 days. So
yeah,
but there is enormous potential there. But it has to be executed on, to make it work.
Yeah, it makes it a little complex, but I think it'll be really cool to see what happens.
But I think on the flip side, the way the competitors, I guess, look at the industry and the brands, again, like the ones I listed off that are supporting SVR at the beginning, I'll remind you, those brands aren't there to sell you product because you're not the target audience.
Right, yeah.
Be very thankful that those brands are involved making an event like SVR happen where you're in the air conditioning, all weekend. because those brands aren't involved with Aggieland, and guess what? You're going to be out in the heat when you're not being judged.
Yep.
Now you'll know when you're being judged, and you'll have the opportunity to come inside for that, and the judges will be taken care of and all that. But it's obviously a different style of event when it comes to that. SVR is much higher production level because there's a lot more money involved.
Yeah,
and
it takes all those guys. It takes all of those sponsors to make that happen. I mean, I'd hate to see what all of that costs. What the place costs to rent. What it costs to get the judges there. What it costs to house them and feed them and all that kind of stuff. It's a lot.
The money goes immediately when it comes to as far as the entry fees and that, especially at Aggieland, where this year there's no orgs or anything, so you don't even have that kind of slush coming off of that.
Extra,
yeah, exactly. Like back when we did Lone Star for a couple of years, and Italia Hi-Fi bankrolled majority of that. Again, we did have, especially the first year, we had vendors and everything, but again, it was $500, $1,000 pop. When the event was negative 5 figures. So it's like, the tents were like $28,000.
Holy mackerel!
Yeah. So there's so much that goes into all that. That again, it's like, I don't want to say be grateful, guys, but at the same time, it's kind of like whatever you can do to help push something these people's ways and help out the community internally without just asking for free stuff or whatever. And I know everybody's, again, friends. I know everybody helps each other out, and that's good. But I think the more we can, if we're going to put focus on growing things or whatever, if that's where your mindset is on what you want to do, then I think getting a clear path towards that on how that happens and how we execute on that and how we go to the next, get a call to action for the next step is important.
Yeah, I think that's part of what made it really big in the beginning. When sound quality was first a competition, back in the 80s, moving into 90s when it was huge. It was really sales driven at that time,
Well, yeah, because back then nobody knew how to install something except for the installers. And even then, maybe they didn't.
There wasn't YouTube.
Yeah, right, exactly. You didn't have Dyma, you didn't have YouTube.
Yeah.
And so 100% of it was to get people involved to go to a shop to build a car to compete. So, I think that's the hard part that people kind of don't understand now. It's like the amateurs back then were all shop built cars.
Oh, yeah. Well, it was much more even a car culture in general for the regular public even.
Yes.
That kind of made it huge for that time. And then here's this new thing that you can attach to it, the stereo stuff. And it just was a great time for it, the novelty and the sales generated by it, and I don't think we'll ever get back there because the world is so much different. People aren't even interested in cars as much as they were, but to get the people that love sound and great sound, we'll have to try to capitalize as much as we can. Yeah.
And again, on the flip side, enjoy the community that we have as well.
Absolutely.
And, I think that's don't be looking for the next person so hard that you overlook the person that's already next to you.
That's one thing that I think I was talking to someone else about this is what made Steve Stern so great at this is every time you went to a show, he was the guy doing the entries and all that kind of stuff. And he knew everyone's name. And he was really, you really felt that he was grateful that you were there, and he was real genuine in all that.
Yep. No, I agree. And he did a lot of work. I've told other people too, the only reason that I did as much with Mecca as I did back in the day when I was doing more events with SQOLOGY and everything else was because he was calling me every week to say, what do you got on the docket? What are you planning? What can we do here? What do you think about this? He
was good at pushing it.
They basically made the Forex events for us for Aggieland, SVR, and the hybrid show. That all came about pretty much for that, to just having a kind of a way to elevate things, and get more people involved. but he never, from the very beginning, when I first went to his house in 1999, it's been a long time ago, but it's like,
Right.
it's like, he took this kid off a street and went, sure, let's do this. And yeah, it's his presence. He was also, on the flip side, not liked by certain people, and he definitely has days because he stood up for what he thought was right in that moment, no matter what,
Yeah. Yeah.
And so
He didn't back down from a challenge.
Exactly. If you crossed that, you got the horns,
Yep.
but you knew where you stood with him. There was never a shadow of a doubt, whether good or bad, you knew where he stood, and he was able to work through it. But yeah, you're absolutely right. That was a big part of it. And there's just not the event promoters. And in that case, what, like the case you're talking about, Steve was the event promoter in that. He was the person that was on the ground, boots running. There was very few. I would say that my shows and then West Coast with Richards were probably the only shows that he just never really touched. He just let us do our thing.
Yeah.
And Richard's a phenomenal example of that today, as far as
Absolutely.
on the event promoting side, because he's so involved on the SPL side plus the SQ side. When I went out there last year was it Reno or Vegas? One of the events out there, I might be wrong. One of those desert cities. And for one of his events, and SQ was kind of shoved around the side, whatever, but you walk through the SPL lanes with him and he's like a celebrity. But yeah, I mean, same thing. He has such an amazing pulse on everybody that's involved. And if Richard won't communicate with you, that's probably your problem, because he's very, very good on the communication side and just being open and honest about what he doesn't have. There's no agenda there, and it's like he just, again, the brand is SQ and it's all about the people, and let's just make it work for everybody.
Yeah.
And so I think he's I would say at one point I was that person that was in touch with everybody, that was up and coming and competing and everything. Now I'm too far removed from it all, but Richard is definitely that person that I think has an amazing pulse across the country as to what's going on and kind of what we can do next. I mean, and I know like Jeremy in Texas, he's done a tremendous job at keeping events going and everything else. Now Mel Valdez is getting some events going leading up to Aggieland. Cassie is done her fair share over the past couple of years, no doubt, in an area that never really had any shows.
Yeah, it'll take a lot of effort, between all of the people in their regions, if we're to make this, a rewarding and larger thing into the future,
Yeah, and just keeping people involved. And you see how many shows Richard does in California constantly, and people show up, and I'm like, I don't know that. I feel like you would get a certain level of people just tired of driving to events, but I mean, they keep doing it. Of course, their weather is much better than ours, so
yeah, they don't really have an off season.
Yeah, that helps a lot that they have the weather on their side. But the more excuses we can have to get together that aren't a giant production, might be the way to help some of that. And I mean, Angie Landis in Florida has really done her fair share in kicking that area up.
Yeah,
consistently.
For a while, there's kind of not a lot happening in that particular area, but she's done a great job in re-engaging and getting people involved and excited about competitions again. And, she spearheaded, making that Florida Audio Expo thing happen.
Yep.
And she's done a really good job with it.
Oh, yeah, 100%. So the more we can all support each other on that, especially the ones that are on the inside, because, obviously, if you're not growing, you're dying. It's one or the other. So,
yeah.
But as long as we don't grow just for the sake of growth, I think it's as long as there's a somewhat of a strategy that we can pull together and agree on. And I guess that's my biggest thing again is kind of knowing what we're doing, what the effects of that are. Because I would say the growth that happened in we talked about like in the 80s into the 90s and into the mid, it seems like I wasn't as involved, personally, because I wasn't in this area then. I was in the Northwest where it was kind of remote, from everything.
Yeah.
But seems like around that 1997 era was kind of when things fell apart. And I would say that was partially due to the growth.
A little bit, Yeah, it grew and grew and grew. And, some people were there to try it and they didn't know what a great sounding system was, but they thought theirs sounded great. And then they get smashed and then they don't return. And so there's a lot of that kind of thing that happens back then. Now it's a little more inviting in a way that if something's not up to par, on sound or something, there's usually a few people at every show that are willing to help figure it out and get you over the hump for the next show. Whereas back then it was really cutthroat.
Well, and if you have 20 people in your class, that's a good thing if you win. But if you're 20th out of 20 people in the class,
yeah, you don't come back.
And that's one class. I mean, that's not a money round. That's one class. What's your incentive for? What's your next step incentive? They're like, oh, well, I could do everything that I could possibly do, and you just didn't have. Granted, you didn't have the information back then that you do now.
Right. Yeah. And so, I mean, a lot of it was being tried for the first time then, and, install was such a huge part of it then, it became this giant money game, to be able to win. And most people figured out they couldn't afford to win. And so they would just go do something else.
Yeah.
Something cheap like golf.
I'll shatter everybody's thought process now. There is no cheap hobby. Like, my hobby is cassette tapes. Guess what? That can be very expensive very quickly.
But I mean, it got to where the brand identities for a lot of the car audio brands was involved with competition so much to the point they had people that were nearly on payroll to just build their car or build a car and go win.
For sure.
And how can a normal person that works at like a gas station or whatever, if you're trying to get everybody involved, like how does a normal person ever afford to be competitive in that kind of a thing,
100%. Yeah. Yeah.
So it nearly ruined it, and it kind of went away for a while, or at least took a huge downturn.
When you got the kicker semi showing up with Mark Eldridge and Gary Biggs in it, like,
yeah, I mean, each, so every brand had their time, like MTX Thunder Force and PPI had a huge team for a little bit, and then, Kicker, JBL, so on and so forth,
Well, and I think even back then, what everybody realized is there's not enough ROI on it to keep doing that.
Right. I mean, that's another reason why it kind of fell apart, because number one, the normal people can't afford to do that, so you would lose competitors. And then the brands that were paying for all this didn't get enough money back in sales to make it really worthwhile. So then just everything sort of went away, and it became more of the enthusiast and hobbyist that you see, these days.
And I don't know personally see any reason for that to change, No.
The people that are in it now are a lot more passionate and enjoy it, I think.
And enjoy each other. I mean,
correct. There's not nearly as many like fist fights at shows.
Right. They still happen, but yeah, not nearly as many.
Right.
That's why you don't see a keg at Aggieland anymore. And this is all just discussion. And if somebody has a differing opinion, I would love to have them on and discuss it more.
Yeah, I think that those were great days, and we had to have them to get to where we are now. We'll never. I don't see any way back there, honestly.
It's like bemoaning discos at this point. Like,
right? Yeah.
Why don't we have more discos? What happened? Well, that's gone now.
Yeah.
And I mean, I think every generational thing is going to see those issues. I mean, baseball, basketball, like, tons of sports. They have all of these, obviously big into cycling and stuff. Like any of these things, they're all doing the same thing, going, how do we get the young people involved? How we do this?
It goes in waves,
It's like, and I don't know that you do. Like, you have to, the people who want to get involved, you have to do it yourself, for one.
Yeah.
And if you do it yourself and then other people enjoy it and they get into it, then cool. If they just go, hey, that's fun, not for me, then fine.
If it's cool enough, people will find you.
Yeah, exactly. Anyway, I think we'll probably beat that horse, but I don't know. It was on my mind, and I had a discussion with a couple other people, and they were like, I was like, oh, maybe it'd be fun to kind of delve into the topic a little bit. And
yeah, but I think we're in a pretty good place. It seems to be on the upswing again. Because I mean, we had reached a pretty good point, in 2019, and kind of COVID, and then went down again. But we're on the upswing, so I think we're doing all right.
I mean, the bookshelf there wasn't bad, because like 2019, we had 90 some competitors at finals.
Yeah.
And then 2021, when we did the first Lone Star, we had 72 or 73 competitors, which, was easily for a sound quality only event, the biggest non-finals event of recent time. So,
I think I had more entries in finals that year.
Oh yeah, for sure. Well, because finals was still all over the place at that point.
Yeah.
Just post COVID. But yeah, you had a good bookshelf around COVID as far as, bookends around COVID. But then, I think a lot of that was just with the change of hands and orgs, with IASCA and Mecca both changing hands at the same time. You had event directors bouncing around, some doing more shows, some doing fewer shows, finals not being consistent as far as location goes, and just the general economic and I think personal upheaval since then. There's a lot of people out there where paying thousands of dollars to get somebody's feedback on their car is not the top of their priority in life right now. So
yeah, I totally get that. Yeah,
I think there's just life is happening right now, and just in general, the world is in a different space than it was. But obviously, there's some of us that are just never going to, stop doing it. But
I'll be doing it until I'm dead, I guess.
Here we are. This is our life.
I just like it. I don't know.
Yeah. And why? I mean, I guess that's the next question. Why? I don't know. Like I said, it's
it's the people, it's the friendships for me,
Yeah.
Like I'd put on a recent post, one of the Facebook things, someone had asked, have you ever been to a sanctioned sound quality event or something like that? And everybody's, posting their trophies and all that kind of stuff. And we know all the people that's been to them, but, I posted on there. It's like, yeah, I mean, that I've met some of my very best friends, doing sound quality, over the years, going to these contests and stuff. So that's why I do it.
For me, a get together isn't enough to a certain degree. Just maybe it's just the way I'm built, but I really need something to do.
Yeah, I really like to get togethers, and for me, when I'm at those, it becomes my mission to kind of meet everybody, listen to every car there.
Yeah.
Almost like I'm judging, but
right,
not actually writing things on a score sheet.
Right.
But the same kind of mentality, I want to meet all the people there. Like, what brings us all together? How do we keep this kind of enthusiasm? How do we get more enthusiasm? Because it's a lot of fun. It's what drives it, But I just like you, that by itself is not enough for me. Every once in a while, I like to see if I still have it. You know what I mean? Try. Right. Can I win one still? And every once in a while I can. Mostly in second place.
I just need a room and a calculator, and I'm good. Just give me even when I mentioned earlier, going out to the Vegas show or Reno show, whatever it was, with Richard, and I get
one of those Vegas deserts, one of those Nevada places.
Exactly, and I was pretty much immediately put myself in this scorekeeping role. So I was sitting in my van tallying up scores.
That's funny.
Like he didn't even know I was coming. I just showed up. Like I just drove up, and I was like, "Hey, Richard." He's like, "What?
Got something I can add?"
Yeah, exactly. I need some numbers stat. Anyway, Yeah, we'll see where this conversation goes. But I appreciate you taking the time as usual, and we'll chat soon.
All right, man. Talk to you later.